From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. James, how are you? I'm looking forward to a great conversation and chance for us to spend some time together.
Oh, I'm doing good, Steve, and it's always great when we can connect and chat. I love having our guests on, wealth of knowledge, but sometimes it's good just to have you and I chat, and today's one of those days. How are you doing?
Doing well, and I agree. And we've had a great run of guests, and we also get to be guests ourselves when we have Dan Farisi on, and you can catch many of those episodes. But it's good change of pace for us to get a chance to talk. And sometimes what we talk about are things that we come up with because it's things that, and I like to do this both in podcasting and in writing, is you play off of something that is a personal experience or something that you're wrestling with. Sometimes we want to talk about something that one of our guests has talked about. So, in this case, if you listen back to episode 277, we had Lyle Waldron on, and towards the end of that episode, he mentioned about programmers and how he works with a programmer and how what he expects is that a programmer is going to be setting him up for success and that he's going to take what a programmer has created for him for a particular project and he's going to build upon that moving forward. And that kind of gets into a little bit of a debate and a little bit of a sensitive topic. And I remember commenting on that, saying, this is something that programmers should be thinking about. But it also comes down to when you're writing code for a project, is that code limited to that project, or is that code going to be used elsewhere? And does that factor into pricing? But it also needs to be thought about in terms of how you author that code. And so these are all, I think, topics that could be debated, and people are going to have differences of opinion. We bring them to light because it's important for us to talk about this within our community and for programmers to get differences of opinions on them. So, James, I'll throw that out to you. I have a feeling I know where you stand with this, and I have a feeling that you'll have a lot of great insight to share. But when you're working with a programmer, are you disclosing to them that you plan on evolving their code? I know that you're going to need to do it from a maintenance standpoint, and likely you're going to need to do some updates. I mean, that totally makes sense. But do you have to go back to that programmer, or is it something that you plan on doing yourself? And are your expectations that you're going to have free reign and that somebody's going to be setting you up so that you can build upon what they've given you successfully?
It's a
That's three
great question.
questions. I know it's a lot.
Those are great questions, Steve. I would say, I talked to other programmers? Unfortunately, no. Um, and that was really my own fault, in a way, because my old job, I was the programmer. So who am I going to talk to? Myself, like, are you? But I did, design my code that it could be scalable and usable by other folks. Um, Here, I don't do programming as much. And really is when we've been like, okay, we got it installed, got it working the way we want. We haven't really needed to do anything yet because we're a new building. Um, that is coming to its head soon because we are hitting about 4 or 5 years now. So that's where I got to start thinking about that process. So was that conversation had before? No. Should have? Yes. I do have a great workmanship with our prefer integrator programmer. So I'm pretty confident that we can work together and be able to scale. There were some scalable things I asked them to put in the code that we can enable and disable when we need it, but they weren't anything major. So yeah, I really haven't had those conversations.
And you touched on a lot of good things there too about, scaling and flexibility and because it sounds to me, and because I think, and I'm thinking back to the days where I was, um, and I still am, the owner of a programming company, and we used to do more project work. Now we do more development work. But at those times, we wrote into our proposals that the code is used and intended for this room, and if you want to use it elsewhere, we either will have a small replication fee or we need to discuss that. And that's something that I know that some of our code was probably reused and without our notice of it or knowledge of it, and that's just part of the game. It's but I think these days we looking at, and there are probably still one-off systems, but looking at projects, they're likely going to not be just a single room. It's likely going to be multiple rooms, or it's likely going to be something that needs to be modified and scaled, and certainly over time to put in new products. So, does that become part of the scope? Does that become something where you say, this code that you're writing is a code base that we are going to grow, and also is the way Lyle was saying, and if you think about it, this could be a great opportunity for partnership. So, we grow it together, and but understand that this is something that we need to have a working relationship that's going to be cost effective, and we're going to be able to, it's going to be serviceable. Um, but I know that, more clients likely want to be hands-on, and they want to be able to take what somebody has developed for them, and they want to be able to make their own changes because it's just part of the game. I heard that for years, that, we don't want to have to pay these big fees to add a product or swap out something. So,
Yeah, that's a big one, and I've seen that too, where I I think it's almost a case by case basis. It's hard to say this or that, black and white type deal. Like for example, if a user just wants a text change on a text panel, why would they have to pay $300-400 for an hour of a programmer to do probably what will take 2 minutes? Like having them able to do that is good. They need to know how to do that. Um, they need to be able to do it reliable without breaking other things. Switching from manufacturer X to manufacturer Y display, that might need a little more depending on the new manufacturers and the drivers and all that stuff. So that one I can see, you might have to pay your programmer and made. So like I said, it all depends. And I really think it comes down to, are we building our code that we are the only ones who can touch it? And are we then shoehorning our customers into us in a negative way? And as a manager now, I don't like being put into a box. I tell manufacturers this all the time. I do not have brand loyalty. I will switch if I need to. If your products aren't working, if you're putting me in a box, pushing me around, go, well, we are the big dog. You have to deal with us. Who else are you going to go with? Well, I'm going to go with somebody else and prove you wrong. I've done that. Um, Same thing with programming. It's like, okay, if I got to keep paying your program $300 an hour to make these minor changes, I'm losing faith in your company. That's not a good business partner. I'm going to have less faith in you in the bigger ones. And I'm going to start shopping around or, invest in house. Like higher ed has invested in house with folks, mainly because of some of these bad business practices from people. So how we are developing our code, are we blocking it out, or are we actually doing bad work? And what I mean by bad work, or let's say shady work, not bad work, of reusing code but charging for brand new written code, like that's not always fair. And there has been cases where I know of, it sounds weird, and it's like you're thinking in your head as a program, who cares about this? But there was a house of worship who had an AV system put in. The code that was used was also used as strip joint. And the wording in the code talked about strip joint back rooms and things like that. And some of that language got out onto the public interfaces. And so that's a bad look for the church. Like, cool. You're like, oh, who cares about what I call the back code and things? Well, it does matter, especially if it leaks out. So yeah, I would say you got to be careful. We want to protect our intelligent property, our IPs, but we also don't want to be so closed off that we are closing ourselves off from business.
Yeah. It's a tough one because I can argue it in both ways. And I know that I've been down this road and I don't want to sugarcoat that either. I know that why people charge what they do, and I know that it also is not cost effective in some cases. And I know that, kind of reusing some code res responsibly is part of the game because you build that's how you build your leverage and margin. And but yes, but so the theme that I keep coming up with is transparency and trust and relationship. So if you have somebody that you will work with and you can sit down and map out, let's talk about not just what you want here, but let's talk about your bigger plan, and let's talk about what your needs are in a roadmap. Um, what we have done and what I've seen done before is build a code base that can be expanded, that can be configured. And when I say configured, I don't mean configured like a no code solution, but more of it has variables in it that can be set that will allow code to be repurposed in a elegant way and in a way that also empowers the client and gives them the ability to change certain settings on their own. And we've done that quite a bit, and I'm sure others have too. Where you can edit certain buttons in the back end, and you can set certain features, maybe turn on or off automation or enable an extra source or remove a source without having to go in and edit code. And those are really, in my opinion, the elegant ways of empowering a client and giving them but that's writing for a very complex code base that is uh, so you're not necessarily modifying code, but you're modifying settings to allow you to have the empower you to be able to make the changes that you need to make. But writing code to be able to hand off to somebody, in my opinion, I think also requires documentation. It requires training. It requires being able to be open to sharing your style or maybe creating a style that you're willing to give to somebody else. So it could change the way code is written. I know the I've always thought that writing very optimized code, the trade-off is less readability and less ability to easily modify, but it could be very, very well written and in fewer lines or fewer symbols and probably more in a more advanced way. But that's not necessarily great if you're going to give it to somebody who is not at that level or doesn't understand it. So a lot of factors to consider there.
Yeah, and I think what I'm going to try to now also touch on here in the discussion is that, we talked about, handing off our code to other people make modification and, the pros and the cons of that. So let's think about, okay, we are how we are, are we doing that? The thing we got to think about is I heard this from a good friend, Ryan Gray, who says, you know, you got to put yourself out of a job. And think about this is if you're your company's programmer and you're a really good programmer, for you to move up, if you want to move up, they need someone to be able to program. If you're the only one who can program it, how likely are they going to promote you without nobody to fill your back end, back you up? So, how are you designing your code? Can somebody jump in, read it, modify it, understand it? And I haven't done this really with code. I'll probably do the same principle, but the one principle I like to say is when I talk about wiring up racks. And I tell my student workers this, my employees this. I've said this many times: is wire up a rack like that. If the person who is coming in behind you is a insane serial killer who will hunt you down and kill you if you piss them off. Because 99% chance you're going in behind yourself, so don't piss yourself off. Same with our code. Like put comments in there. How many codes do you probably go in at 12 months, 13 months, 2 years, 5 years later, you'll let them be like, what was I doing here? Because you didn't put any comments
Mhm.
or any notification. And then you got to you spend a good day just thinking about what was I thinking here many years ago.
Yeah, and it goes back to our last episode too, where we talked about the disaster recovery. If you're not documenting and you don't have uh, all of your notes in terms of how to recover, then you're going to be sunk. You may remember in the moment and it may seem obvious, but you may not be the one that has to deal with it. And so you have to be thinking about the next person. I really like the serial killer analogy is that, you know, it, you need to treat this like, with that do or die type of mentality.
Yeah. And yeah, I usually get a chuckle on when I tell especially my student workers that, and you can see there are racks that, like I said, I know we're a program community here, but there are definitely racks I have looked in, and I'm like, if I ever came across this person in the street, this would not be pretty. Like, yeah.
That's
But
funny.
same thing with code. I've done that too, where I'm reading someone's code and I'm like, why are they doing this? Like, this makes no sense. It probably made sense to them at that time, or maybe it didn't. They were just throwing things against the wall.
Very, very possible, both.
Yeah.
And sometimes, the third option is that they were just a victim of a situation where they were trying to get something done last minute, or they had a lot of changes thrown at them, or they were they, they were in a situation where they were forced to kind of be sloppy, if you will, because they were just trying to get the job done. But all of these I think are important conversations, and I hope that our audience has. I'm sure that it has evoked some emotions, and it has, and there, if you are listening and watching, let us know what you think. How do you handle these situations? What do you think is best? Where is there a good compromise? Try to look at things from both perspectives. Hey, the last point that I was going to make is if you have to sign your name to the work that you do, would you handle it differently? And if your name was on the back of a rack, or your name was very prominent on this file, and it said how to reach you. How would you handle your coding or whatever it is that you're doing? So, James, what are your takeaways, and how can people get in touch with you to continue this conversation?
Well, I think you kind of summed it up right there. Like, are you willing to publicly put your name on your product you're putting out there? Um, if you even if you're a little bit hesitant, then you can do better. Um, but we know constraints, we know timelines, all that stuff happens. Yes, we talked about we should do this, but we also know life gets in the way.
Agreed.
Um, yeah. So you're right. I think there's gonna be a lot of emotions from our listeners. I would love to hear our listeners' feedback. In a one thing I've taken as a coach from soccer, I'll add here, if you're in an emotional state, which is good, nothing wrong with that. Like wait 24 hours before you comment. Let the emotions, and then
Write
you
them
come in
down,
with
but
a
then
cooler
go
head.
back before you post them.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, like, trust me, I want to hear your emotions and stuff, but, 24 hours, think about it, process it. Don't let as I tell my players, don't let emotions drive you. You can have emotions, identify them, but don't let them be the driver. Again, you want to get a hold of me, Google me. I'm out there. Ask the programmer community on LinkedIn. Again, I'm out there.
And for me, I second what James said, but we do want to hear from you, and I do like that we're able to have these types of conversations, and we are trying to be more open, and we are trying to help people think about things differently, and there's always going to be uh, pros and cons, and people who are in favor or against some of the things, and but it's why we put the topics out there. So please let us know what you think. For me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. LinkedIn is the best place, and as James mentioned, our Ask the Programmer group on LinkedIn is where we're trying to bring our listeners and our audience together so that we can create community and get people talking and get people to get to know each other. If you are a member of that group, or please let us know. Introduce yourself. If you have a topic or a suggestion for a show, or if you're interested in being a guest, which many of our listeners came from our LinkedIn community, please reach out and let us know. If you are watching this podcast on YouTube, you can also catch us on the go on your favorite podcast player. Uh, on the other side, if you are listening, you can watch us on YouTube. So both are places where you can leave us a rating or review or comment. We really would like to hear from you, and we are interested in understanding and receiving your thoughts. So please reach out, and thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. This has been Ask the Programmer.